In today's note, we're going to be introducing our Earth and Space unit by looking at the universe. So the first thing we're going to go over is just a couple definitions. So first is astronomy, and astronomy means the study of the universe and the objects in it. The second is celestial objects, and celestial objects are basically anything that we can see in the sky. And the celestial objects can be broken down into two categories: luminous, which means that they light themselves, or non-luminous, which means that they reflect light from another source. So an example of a luminous object would be the sun or stars, because they're producing their own light. And then a non-luminous object would be the moon. It doesn't produce any light, it looks bright, but that's only because it's reflecting the light from the sun. We're going to look at a quick overview of the planets, so we can kind of see the solar system here and the planets within it, and we're just going to do a quick breakdown of each one and just a small characteristic of it. So before we look at the planets in our solar system, we're going to look at specifically the characteristics that make a planet. So the first one, it needs to be in orbit around a star, such as the sun. So a planet needs to orbit around around a star. It has to have enough mass to be pulled into a stable sphere shape by gravity. So that means it needs to be in a sphere shape. And it needs to dominate its orbit, which means that its mass must be greater than anything else that crosses its orbit. So when it's circling the sun, it can't come across anything else that will affect how its orbit or change its trajectory. So the first planet we're going to look at, the closest one to the sun, is Mercury. So it's small, hot, and it's very close to the sun. It's the closest planet. Then moving away, we have Venus. Venus is considered the sister to the Earth. It's close to the same size, same density, and a similar chemical makeup to Earth. Then we have Earth, so the planet that we live on, kind of self-explanatory. Mars is considered the red planet because there's so much iron on there, it gives it that red color. Jupiter, the failed star with a great red spot, so you can see the great red spot on Jupiter, and that's actually a large storm that's on the planet. Saturn is the ring planet because of the large ring. Uranus, it's tilted compared to other planets, so it flies through space on its side. So just an example of what that might look like. So say we have our planet spinning on a central axis. Actually, let me get it. Spinning on a central axis that goes up and down like that. So that's a normal planet, and it spins around in this direction. So it spins that way. Uranus, and because it's tilted, it's going to spin, or it's going to be tilted and it's going to spin in a different direction. So it's going to spin something like this. So it's going to spin in this direction. So it's going to be tilted and spinning like that. So that's the key difference between Uranus and the other planets. Neptune, the great dark spot, so similar to Jupiter, it has a great dark spot on it. And those were all the planets in the solar system. The next are dwarf planets. So these are things that are similar to planets, although there are some certain characteristics that they don't follow. So we have things such as Pluto, Ceres, and Eris. Just some examples. So dwarf planets, again, they are objects that orbit around a star, so similar to planets. They have enough mass that they are spheres, so again, like planets. But the key characteristic is that they do not dominate their orbits. So if we look here, we can see an example of what we mean by this. So we have the orbit of Neptune, which spins around the sun. And then on the outer side, we have the orbit of Pluto, and you can tell that its orbit is not the same, or it's not circular directly around the sun. So that means when it comes close to Neptune, its orbit actually gets disrupted because its mass isn't greater than the one it comes in contact with. So that means that Pluto is not considered a planet, which is a relatively new characteristic. I think it was around 2006. Up until then, it was considered a planet, but now it's considered not a planet anymore. So there are generations of people that were taught that it's a planet. So other celestial bodies that you may find. One, we have moons. So again, similar to the moon that we see, other planets have moons. So again, they're orbiting that planet. Asteroids. So asteroids are composed of rock and metal. Most are found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They can be as small as a pebble and as large as 1,000 kilometers across. So they vary in size, and they're mostly found, there's a belt of them between Mars and Jupiter. Meteors. So each streak that you can see in the sky, you can see the example here, is a piece of rock or dust burning up as it enters our atmosphere. That rock, as it's burning up, is considered a meteoroid. If it hits Earth, it is called a meteorite. So two different names. One, if you just see it in the sky and it burns up, but in some cases, if it hits the Earth, then it's called a meteorite. Comets. Comets are called big dirty snowballs. Basically, they're balls of ice and dirt or dust, and they're flying through space. They have two tails, and we can kind of see that in the picture here. The dust tail that kind of has a yellowish hue, and the ion or gas tail that has a blue hue. So basically what's happening is, as these comets are flying through space, the sun and the heat energy heat up these snowballs and melt them a little bit, and the cosmic winds or the pressure in space actually pushes the tails back, or the dust and everything that's is generated from the melting of these snowballs pushes them back. So that's what actually causes those tails. And we have stars. So similar to our sun, basically stars are a massive collection of gases, and they emit huge amounts of energy. So if you think of the sun, we get all of the sunlight, the amount of energy that it's producing, and we're so far away from it that we're still getting enough energy that we can power almost anything. So they do emit huge amounts of energy. The planets in our solar system can be categorized into kind of two categories. One, we have the rocky planets, so Earth, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Pluto, not anymore, unfortunately, because it is now not considered a planet. All right, so it is a dwarf planet. So again, you can see even there in this image, it's still considered a planet, but these ones are all considered rocky planets. So basically they have more of like a rock core. They're more solid. And then we have what's considered the gas giants. So these are planets that are made up of gas, right? So we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and then you can see the rocky giants below, or the rocky planets below. So again, this is just a comparison of the sizes. So you can see the gas giants here, and then the rocky planets below. So the gas giants are definitely larger than the rocky planets. So again, that was just an overview of basically some of the celestial bodies that you can find in the sky, and kind of just some short descriptions on them.